What's 5-letter word for a type of bread? The old man said, looking up from his crossword and nudging his wife, who was trying to read. She thought. Toast? 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 That's not a type of bread. That's, what do you, call it? Rye? I turned my head, yawning, and faced the teenage girl, looking up from her cell phone to scoff at the old couple. Seated a cup close to her was a middle-aged man listening to his earbuds. Try wheat, the old woman finally said. Wheat. That's it. Wait, it has to end with an E, babe. White? The man with the earbuds said from across the Whitechapel. There we go, the old man said. Thank you, young man. The man with the earbuds nodded at the old stranger. Then, as if on cue, a door swung open to reveal a young woman in a white gown of sorts. Brooke Thomason? She called out. After a moment, the teenage girl stood up, still staring intently at her phone, and walked towards the woman, following her into the back room. I wonder what this is all about, the woman said, sitting down. From the few across from me said. I tried to ignore her. Perhaps she seemed a little bit rude, but I really didn't like whatever people called the exaggerated small talk from me. I just wanted to complete the study and go home to my $400. God, this was what my life has come to? Buying scratch off from the gas station and sitting around for hours waiting to complete studies from this community colleges? At least one seemed legit. The so-called scientists had lab coats on. That's more than I could say for most of these amateur surveys. However, the whole renting was out of a church thing for the credibility and down a tad. Sorry, this is my first time, the woman continued, snapping me from nearly drooling in my jeans. That's okay. I'm kind of used to this, I muttered. Well, what do they usually ask you? The typical, I said. What's your name? What's your sex? How about you describe your eating habits? Are you a defensive driver? Do you smoke e-cigarettes? Are you allergic to peanuts? Peanuts? The woman interrupted. Yeah, one of these things has a peanut butter taste test, I said. I got lucky that time. The door swung open again, and I walked in the same woman coated in white. So, Chelsea Strub? That's me, the woman said a little bit too excitedly, standing up. Wish me luck. I popped a phatic thumbs up towards her as I crossed my arms, watching her escape to the back room. A 5-letter word for car accident, the old man said, breaking the silence. I don't know, dear, his wife said, barely lifting her head from the pages of her book. The old man looking up, eyes focused on me. You got any good ideas? He asked. If I did, I wouldn't be here. The old man chuckled a bit and laughed. The door swung open. Spencer Bell? The woman in white said. Finally, I stood up and nodded at the old man and followed the woman through the door. Welcome in, Mr. Bell. Thank you, I replied to the woman, following her at the hip. We appreciate you taking the time to a busy schedule to participate in our study. Well, I chuckled, I appreciate the $400. We stopped a while before the white door. She looked right at me. They'll give you the funds as soon as you complete the study. Do enjoy yourself, Mr. Bell. Thank you, I said, walking through the door. Inside, my eyes immediately adjusted to the darkness. The room was far more dimmer than the brightly lit sanctuary, dressed in the moody lighting and a large table. Behind it, a man in a lab coat was smiling up at me. Behind him was a set of monitors, wheeled into the church in some kind of cart. The man stood, extending an arm to a hand towards me. Welcome. You must be Mr. Bell. That's why they called me, I said slyly. And why they called me Mr. Fredrickson. I'll be conducting you the study today. We both sat. I looked the man up and down. I could tell he'd be doing the same. So what's this all about? I asked. Well, just a study we're conducting the cognitive dissonance. Does the study cater to English speakers too? I joked. Forgive my jargon. Contraction. We are studying the contraction with the human mind. Sounds interesting, I said. Oh, believe me, it is. But first, just some routine formalities. I nodded in reply. Spencer Edward Bell, correct? Yes, I replied. 32 years of age? 32 years young, I replied. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? I hesitated. Not that I know of, I said. Neither do I, he winked, leaning back. Well, he clapped, I'll make this short for you and as sweet as possible. There is 4 sections to the study: verbal, auditory, visual, and tactical. In each section, you'll be presented with a choice. As long as you see in the moment, not all choices are black and white. The hardest ones are often gray. Sounds simple enough. I nodded. The man nodded back, leaning forward eagerly and opening the manila folder atop of the clipboard, stuffing some papers into it. He looked up at me with the click of a pen. When do you do this alone as I have? You don't really need papers. More formalities, I suppose. I nodded, yawning. On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 not being not likely and 5 being highly likely, how are you steal food? I paused. 1. He nodded and jotted my response. On the same scale, how likely are you to steal food if you're starving? I paused. Longer this time. 4. Again, he wrote down what I said. How likely are you to cheat in a relationship? 1, I said. He nodded and scribbled. How likely are you to cheat if your significant other did first? 2, I said hesitantly. How likely are you to kill a child? Is 0 an option? I nervously joked. He wrote it down. He wasn't smiling. How likely are you to kill a child if they were about to be tortured? I didn't answer, opting to swallow a thick mouthful of spit. What kind of a question is that? Just formality. 1 to 5, Mr. Bell. I don't want to answer that one. They never do, he whispered under his breath, sliding the tape player along the table. That's fine, he said. We'll move on to the auditory test. What's that? I asked. Was that all the questions? There is more, but if you can't answer that one, you won't answer any of the others. He wound up the tape and hovered his finger back towards the play button. For this section, you'll be listening to a song and giving your feedback. I nodded in hesitant approval, and he pressed play. A song opened and a strum of a chord. There is time for a living, a soothing voice sang. The time keeps flying. The tempo had sped up. You think you're loving, baby, and all you do is crying. Can you feel it? Are those feelings real? Then it all broke into chorus. Look at your game, girl. Look at your game, girl. He stopped. The tape then looked up at me with raised brow. It's I began. Certainly a song. He's got a good voice, I guess. The man nodded. From 1 to 5, how much did you enjoy the song? I'd say 3, maybe 4. He nodded. That was Charles Manson, you know who that is, don't you? I nodded with a sour look and wiped on my face, given the new information. From 1 to 5, how do you enjoy the song? I stared blankly for a moment at the man, expecting an answer. 1, I muttered. The man nodded, reaching again for the folder, retrieving a picture and sliding towards me. Is this the visual test? I asked. Take a look at the image. What do you see, Mr. Bell? I looked down. The image of that of a smiling child looking up at the paper-wrapped sun. I see a happy kid, I shrugged. Good, you're not blind, he throatily laughed. How does it make you feel? Happy, I guess, I said. On a scale of 1 to 5. 5. The man nodded and jotted down what I said. Is this the part where you're going to tell me the kid's actually Ted Bundy? I joked. You're a very perspective close, he said. Jeffrey Dahmer. I lowered my head in the chronic state. Now, how do you feel about the image? 1, I muttered, speaking before the blood shut the question. Do you see how sometimes we're conflicted on how we feel? Maybe guilt is tugging at our heartstrings. Maybe we avoid how we truly felt. Maybe we re-rationalize the quote-unquote bad behaviors. It's cognitive dissonance, Mr. Bell. Can we get on to the last test, Doctor? I interrupted, feeling slightly uncomfortable at this point. The man nodded. The tactical test, our favorite exercise. The man clicked his tongue, simultaneously switching the monitors on, which caused them to disappear into the bright light of the booting screens. In this test, you'll be required to, yet again, make a number of those difficult, conflicting choices. Do you understand, Mr. Bell? I nodded, my eyes squinting against the harsh light. Good, he said, typing something into the computer. But after a moment, a video cut to view. Black and white video of a woman doing the laundry in her living room. It was dark outside, and the woman was alone. "Can't say I've seen this one," I badly said. "You couldn't have," he said. "It's Liv." I stared, horrified, at the unassuming woman, unknowing that she was being watched by me through her own security cameras. Some security, I thought. The doctor turned, looking at the monitor to me, glaring at me, and he beamed. "Let's cut the bullshit, Spencer." I froze, glancing from him to the woman folding her laundry, then back at him. "What bullshit?" I said. He shook his head, clicking an ironic click of his tongue. "You lied to me. We both know you've been arrested. You sure do have some powerful friends, don't you?" He narrowly smiled. "We do too," he whispered. I leaned towards him, my face completely cast in the bright light of monitors, bound by the shadowy room. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stopped me. "Don't worry, I'm not a cop, unlike your dishonest friend in the force." "Then," I said slowly, "who are you?" You must have leaned inches from my face, forcing me to see my own reflection within his glasses. "Someone who understands," he admitted it, leaning back. "If it were my sister, I would have done the same thing." I sat stilly, trying to read his ever-charging face. "How do you know about that?" was all I managed to say. "Morgan Bell," he said, a name I thought about every day, but never heard. "She was your sister, correct?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'd have done the same thing as you," he said. "Too bad they never found who hit her." My muscles tightened as he spoke, my face melted into a scowl. "Thankfully we did," he slyly said, gesturing towards the screens behind him. My eyes pressed against the screens, and I was silent, studying the woman as she ran around her nightly routine. "Her?" I spattered, pointing towards the black and white woman. He nodded. "Yep, and we don't need a slug cop to find her." "No, it's baffling. These things people text their friends in a drunken stupor. We are stunned by when the police never caught on. Or maybe it was the protocols. We have no boundaries, you see." "She's the one that killed Morgan?" I loudly shouted on the monitors, my voice echoing around the room. "Yes, Spencer," he nodded, turning to watch along. "That's the one." I shook my head in disbelief, bombarded by hundreds of memories I didn't want. I started to cry. The doctor leaned forward, handing me a handkerchief. I blew my nose into it as I tried to rub the red off my face. "Sorry," I sniffled. "Don't be," he said calmly. "Are you ready for that final choice?" "No," I joked, trying to cheer myself up, wiping my face. "That's my final choice." The doctor shook his head, interlocking with his fingers with the crumpled brows. He raised them. "Should she live?" he asked. I blankly watched his expression, somewhat contorting into the confident grin of malice, trying to read me before I could read him again. "What?" I spoke from my churning stomach. "You heard me. Should she live?" I stirred my head, truly not grasping the question presented before me. Typically, the more options of a person has make their answers all the more tricky, the doctor spoke. Choosing between 31 flavors is a lot more difficult than chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry. He adjusted himself, never losing me in his line of sight. "This should be an easy question, but we found for most people, it's often the hardest. We know deep down that you really want her dead, but there is something within you that tells you that desire is wrong, and be it so-called head coincidence. Religious upbringing, sentential norms, and the like." He rested his folded arms on the table. "Cognitive dissonance. Like I said, those pesky decisions. Sorting the good from the bad." "Is that what you're studying?" I asked in a silhouetted man, trying to weed out the bad people. He wagged his hand low to the table, his glasses nearly slipping off. "Who are those bad people, Spencer?" he rhetorically asked. "Doesn't make you a bad person want justice for your dead sister?" The doctor sat up, eyeing at me. "Who decides?" I sputtered. "Don't know." "Do you think everyone else is a good person?" I shook my head. I knew that answer. "Then why does a little red on your hands scare you so much? Do you think Mr. Whitebeard out there is holier than you thought just because he does the same bullshit crossword puzzle?" The doctor smiled with a faint laugh. I shook my head again. Good, then why were you letting him dedicate to your choices? I shook my head. I'm not. Of course you are, he said. You are going gug-out-ho about killing your sister's murderer. What's stopping you now? I clamped my eyes over the doctor and the screens. I talked to some people about it. I cleared my throat. Taking revenge is wrong. Is that what they told you? The doctor disappointedly said with a click. See, you are letting them dedicate to your choices. I opened my eyes, letting them focus on the arrogant woman who had taken my sister's life, letting them fill with salty tears. I then felt a handkerchief's soft touch pressed against my knuckles. They were buried into the table now. You seem very conflicted, Spencer, the doctor calmly said. What if I told you that no one would be able to know about which choice you make tonight? It will be our little secret. I lowered my eyes to his, pushing the font in tears to see him clearly. He smiled at me as if winking his face. I raised my eyes, adjusting them to the monitors, watching the happy-go-lucky woman slide under the cozy sheets, flicking the bedroom light off. It appeared that she was getting ready for a good night's rest. Something I hadn't noticed since the accident. The accident she caused. I looked down at the doctor firmly, flushed with heat across my body. Let her die, I spouted. The doctor smiled, as if he had broken through me. He reached down, pulling out a small walkie-talkie and speaking some jargon onto it. Before long, I saw the choice I made. There was a van pulling up to the house on one of the cameras behind him. The doctor spun his chair to face the monitors as the rear door slid open. A group of men hopping out, slinking through the grass and raised feet, and they were out of view of the camera for a moment before appearing on another. They were inside this time. There was a woman had done her laundry earlier. From the light of the kitchen area poured into the dark room below was the masked assailant snuck inside. One of them turned to face the camera, dark eyes peering through the even darker mask, stark and drizzled with various shades of the same color, probably red. Then the doctor's radio beeped. He picked up, listening silently before turning to me. Would you like to watch? He calmly asked. I looked at the screen. The masked man was staring back at me. I hesitantly shook my head, suppressing my passionately beating heart. Part of me wanted to watch her suffer. Part of me was glad that he shut the camera feed off. After a few silent moments, the kitchen camera finally revealed the man dragging the woman's lifeless body across the floor, followed by a trail of dark gray set against the light tile. It didn't take long till her body was loaded into the van, which sped down the foggy road, leaving an empty house behind. The doctor before me nodded contentedly, turning to face me again with a smile. And that's it, the doctor said, retrieving an envelope from the bound-up papers in his clipboard and nudging it towards me. You'll find your $400 inside. It was really a pleasure speaking with you, Mr. Bell. He politely nodded. Thank you for participating in our study. I stood dizzled. I nodded as I headed toward the doctor. My face couldn't hide my aversion to his smile. He noticed and leaned forward at the sound of his clipboard clacking against the table. I need not to tell you what happens if you disclose anything you've seen or heard during our time together, he said with a stern leer and a suggestive nod. Remember that history of yours, Spencer, because we do. I slowly returned the nod, sputtering out a half-hearted thank you as I exited the room. The rest of the church was empty as I stepped past through hushed pews, glancing from side to side to make sure no one was following me. No one was, but I could still feel eyes all over me in that church, in my car, in my apartment, in my bed. Maybe it was all what the doctor had said. Maybe those eyes really do dedicate to my life. Or maybe because I feel guilty. Then again, we're all guilty of something. I know that now. Sometimes I fear the guilty coincidence will get the better of me. I just hear the hum of my vehicles outside my house, the spattering of footsteps across my lawn. Most of the time it's just kids or overreactive imagination. Then again, I know there's blood on my hands, and I'm sure one of these days, another conflicted soul like mine will finally get their choice made too.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here.
I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video. And I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.